Senator Luis Sepúlveda, thank you so much for being with us on ITV Gold. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fine. Thank you so much for having me on your program.
Of course, there is so much to discuss with you, and I'm really glad to have you on our platform today. To starting off this interview, we have 43 days till the election this November 3rd, presidential and congressional elections. I know you're also running for re-election, so my first question to you has to be, why are you running for re-elections, and what is your party's platform?
For me, public service is so deeply ingrained in my bloodstream. I think it's part of my mission to help our community. Now, I have a large immigrant population in my district,
Right.
and I am ferocious about helping and defending them. And immigration is a very big part of my platform as well as my party's platform. My population consists of people from Latin America, from Bangladesh, from West Africa. And so really protecting the rights of our immigrants, it's something that's critical to me. That's why I took the fight on the Green Light Bill, because I knew that I want to do everything within my power to make sure that passes. But there's a multitude of issues that we have to deal with, and we are dealing with now. In our area, things like food insecurity are still a major problem. People are concerned when the moratorium on a housing eviction, what's going to happen, whether you're going to have so many people. Of course, there's the issue of the reopening of the public schools in New York City.
Right.
And then another critical component is how we're going to handle the potential budget deficit that we're going to have in the state of New York. And that's just the state politics and local. The federal politics offer all kinds of other tasks. To me, it is critically important that our populations, be it new citizens, that really go out and vote and take this more seriously than they ever have. If this is their first time voting, take it seriously. If it's not the first time, more seriously. There has to be a change of administration so that we can take this country to an area before this complete lack of the rule of law, complete disrespect to immigrants, complete indifference to Black and brown communities, villainizing communities, putting people against each other. It doesn't even take into account the level of incompetence this president has demonstrated during this COVID crisis. So this is so many different facets of this election that we're going to deal with, and we are geared up for it. We're geared up for the presidential election and the congressional elections. To us, it's critically important to flip the Senate. It's critically important to stop this complete hypocrisy on the Supreme Court nomination. We remember when President Obama was president, 7 months before there was a vacancy, and the Republicans indicated that they should not change or nominate any Supreme Court judge during an election. Yet here we are about 3 weeks away, and suddenly the hypocrisy is so palpable. So we have to do everything we can to stop that.
And when you are talking about voter education and awareness, Senator, who do we need to educate the most right now, according to you?
Well, I think anyone who is not aware of the potential issues that are coming now. There are many people who tell me, for example, I'm not going to vote. It doesn't make a difference. But these are individuals that are not, I don't believe, have really sat down to absorb the issue and the importance of who is leading our government in this day and age, and the importance of changing the president. So people who have a complete indifference to exercising their right to vote, which is really, it's a shame because we're one of the few countries that you can change governments just by voting. Actually, let me say we're one of the countries that can change the government that we have by voting. We should exercise that vote more so than ever, because we have to make sure that those that are indifferent to it are educated about some of the important issues so that they know. The apathy is brought up by what they've seen in politics over the last few years. That's leadership failure, including myself as a leader in this state. We have to do a better job of just educating everyone in terms of issues that are important to the election.
That is so true. And again, we want to take this time to tell everybody to register to vote and make sure to cast that voice of yours in this election. Senator, when we're looking at the South Asian population, or let's talk about communities of color, right now there are a lot of issues that are at stake for communities of color for this election. What are some of those pertinent issues according to you? And when you're looking at the South Asian communities, what should be our focus right now?
My experience with the South Asian communities, they're very quiet, for lack of a better term, in terms of the immigrant population that comes in. They keep to themselves. Some of that is, I believe, fear of government. Some of it is just fear of the unknown.
Right.
I believe that the South Asian community, you've seen elected officials coming from that community recently. You have Kevin Thomas in Long Island. I believe a couple were elected now in Queens. That trajectory has to continue to strengthen itself. The South Asian community has to continue to grow. You're seeing it's much better than it was, for me anyway, 11 years ago. The community now is really getting immersed in the body politic, and that has to happen. You start electing individuals from these communities, and they bring, look, we're all Americans first and foremost, and we're all here to help each other as a community. But there's no denying that in some of these communities where you have large swaths of immigrants, they are better in tune of understanding the issues in their community than people that don't live there, that don't partake. And that's important. You have to bring all these perspectives to the body politic. As a Latino from Puerto Rico, my family from Puerto Rico, I have different issues than, say, the Dominican community, which are immigrants.
Right.
So you have the Bangladeshi community, you have the Pakistani community, you have the Indian community. Everyone will continue to grow politically, and hopefully become a unifying force and continue to thrive in politics.
That's for sure. What do you believe that COVID-19, the pandemic itself, is going to be a crucial issue in these upcoming elections?
Well, I certainly hope so. We've already surpassed 200,000 deaths. And never in the history of this nation have we had a president to preside over the loss of life of 200,000 people who, with a couple of simple things like wearing a face mask and not even ordering, but heavily suggesting and using an example. In this country, unfortunately, he made it a political statement. So if we do that, something like that, we would have had thousands of less deaths. I mean, respectable scientific and medical institutions have clearly indicated that the use of face masks could have saved 100,000 lives, let's say. That is something that we've never seen in the history of this country. And I believe by election day, it'll probably be close to 225, 250,000. So COVID should be the handling of the COVID and the clear incompetence of the president and his staff and his administration, that should be front and center, because everything else that we've suffered, the highest unemployment rates, the deficits are going to spiral. All that was under the same president. It's never happened before, even though we have catastrophic occurrences before. If this is not front and center for you, and you add to that the complete disdain for the immigrant community that this administration has demonstrated, if that's not front and center, then you're not really listening, and you won't vote in a way that will help our communities.
I have to ask you a question on this, since a lot has been said about this already, in terms of knowing that President Trump perhaps knew about the intensity of COVID in the month of February. Do you think New York as a state would have shut down faster and sooner had they known in February?
Oh, absolutely. I believe that a lot of things would have happened sooner, not only at the state and city level, but at the federal level, if Trump had put people before politics and sound the clarion call about the dangers, then the city, the state, all of them could have taken more preventive measures. But unfortunately, he just did nothing. He wants to take this immense credit for the travel ban, which was really the most porous travel ban in the history of travel bans, because you had about 43,000 people from the province of Wuhan coming in, or from China coming into the United States. And by the way, according to most of the scientific knowledge, the virus came in through Europe. So that ban that he talks about really didn't solve the issue. He talks about if he had done that, taken other measures, 2 million people would have died. Well, that's what scientists say would have died if we had done nothing. 2 million people would have died. But had he taken measures, I have no doubt that we probably would have had over 100,000 less deaths as a result of Trump's handling of the COVID crisis. So he's responsible. He knew, and New York would have done a better job. I think most states would have.
Senator, what kind of federal assistance and help does your district still need?
You know, my district is one of the poorest districts in the entire congressional districts in the United States, where most of my senatorial district lies. So we have a multitude of issues that we had even before the pandemic. You know, we have the issue of food insecurity. That's a major issue still. You know, over the last few months, I've given out thousands of pounds of food and produce. And we also have the issue of homelessness. We have the issue of, we ranked out of the 62 counties in New York State. We were the dead last in terms of quality of care, health care. Our educational system is still not comparable to other wealthier areas in the city. So we need everything. And if we don't get federal funding, people will die. Children will get a less quality of an education. And it'll be catastrophic, more so in these communities as COVID has been in terms of deaths, right? 34% Latino, 29% African American. We suffer everything. So when things are bad throughout the state, they're 10 times worse in the districts here in the Bronx that we represent.
What kind of message does it bring of the White House? What kind of rhetorics do you think, are happening when you're looking at their response to COVID-19?
Oh, I mean, it's just divisive. It's how did wearing a mask become a political statement?
Right.
I just don't understand that. I've researched some of the dealings of other countries. Let's say, for example, Taiwan, where the children chastise their parents if they don't have their masks on because they grow up wearing masks. Right? They've had some scares like SARS, and they've managed to handle it, but as well as South Korea. Why couldn't we do that? Why couldn't we not make wearing a mask a political statement? So I think by Trump doing this, he essentially created a level of divisiveness that it was hard for him to go back. And as a result, 200,000 people.
That's a lot of people, and it's still counting in numbers. It's just very, very sad. What have you felt about President Trump's campaign rallies and the entire campaign itself and about the Republican Party? Do you think their supporters are happy and on their side?
I don't really believe that there is a Republican Party anymore. Okay. This is the party of Trump. This is the self-centered, egotistical, narcissistic party of Trump. And unfortunately, sometimes in our political lives, we have to show political courage. And in the Senate and many people throughout this country, his supporters, when faced with complete and total irrefutable evidence of his lies, then they shift the discussion to justify it in other ways. It is amazing the level of lying, the way he refers to women, the way he refers to people that may be slightly overweight or just overweight or are military heroes. I mean, it's despicable. And for a party to support a president who's engaged in this kind of stuff is shameful. We shall see what happens now with the nomination of the Supreme Court, whether they'll stick to their guns when they said they would nominate during a presidential election because of Obama. We'll see what happens now with this one.
Do you believe that there should be a hearing for it before the elections, or do you think that we need to wait just like we did in 2016?
Oh, absolutely. If you're going to be consistent, then remember that when Garland, Justice Garland was a potential nominee for President Obama,
right?
He was 7 months until election.
Wow. So that was
This is 3.5 weeks before the election. And they are just twisting like pretzels to justify their desire to move the nomination forward. Susan Collins from Maine has decided that she will not support until the election, and a large part of that is because she's really polling poorly in her state. I'm trying to remember. There was another female senator who also, I believe, from Alaska, who also said that she will not vote in favor of a nominee until after the election. I believe we need one, maybe two more. Mitt Romney, who has demonstrated courage before, I hope will take the same position. And with these three voting against it, it'd be very difficult to bring up a nomination. And I think a lot of that is premised on what they believe the backlash will be during the election. Do you want to motivate people, especially women, because this court is chipping away at rights of women? If you want to motivate more people from those communities to come out and vote, I dare you to nominate someone now.
What do you say to women, which may even include me, who are scared about their rights being violated or taken away from them? What do you have to say? There has been an outrage. Women are mourning. What do you say to them?
Well, women should continue immersing themselves in the body politics. Last year in the New York State Senate, I believe we elected 14 females. That's in the history of the state of New York. It's supposed to be one of the progressive bastions in this country. So we need to continue that trajectory. Women continue to get involved in social movements, whatever it's important, their causes. Look, there's no doubt that if we get another Supreme Court judge from this president, their potential impact will last way after Trump is in office. They can really freeze and put major stumbling blocks to progress of women's rights in this country. They will vote against equal pay for equal work. They believe in this nonsense about you can contract with your employer however you want to get whatever wages, when in fact we know that employers have a much stronger bargaining position. People don't understand at this macro level that the rights of women will continue to be eroded if we get another conservative judge appointed to this court.
So important for all of us to discuss what's happening here and to actually understand the impact it could have on a person that's living in this nation. How do you compare this with how the Democratic Party has handled this issue or any issue in particular? What is your take on the campaign run of former Vice President Joe Biden and Senator Kamala Harris? Do you think they're doing their job right in connecting with the brown and black communities?
I believe there's still work to be done.
Right.
Absolutely still more work to be done. I mean, even though Biden and several Republican candidates for the Senate are polling well, much better than 2016. I know people say, well, remember what happened with Trump and Hillary Clinton. But what people don't recall is that Trump was always within the margin of error with Hillary Clinton. On some of these races, especially swing states, he's beyond the margin of error. So that gives me solace. And also the fact that 50% of the electorate has already said that they've already decided who they're going to vote for. So that gives me solace that we're doing well. Now, amongst the Latino community,
right,
I think Biden can do much better. The Latino community is composed of many different groups. You have the Puerto Ricans, the Dominicans, the Cubans, the Venezuelans. Right. As you have with the South Asian community, it's the same thing. So it's not as monolithic. Cubans tend to vote Republicans because of the Bay Pig that happened so many years ago. They've remained loyal to the Republican Party, but Puerto Ricans tend to vote and Dominicans tend to vote Democrat. Biden has work to be. If he can solidify and take away votes from Trump on the Latino community, I think you'll have a runaway election. But there's still work to be done in that community. I can't really speak, and I think it's beyond me to want to opine that's outside of where I'm at, how he's doing in the South Asian community.
Right.
But I'm sure that those that are involved in the body politic in that community are making sure that look at us, we're part of the diaspora now. Let's make sure that we all get involved.
Senator, if I was to ask you what is needed for the Democratic Party to win right now, what would you say?
A larger percentage of Latino voters and a high turnout of African American women, because in many elections, African American women tend to carry our Democratic candidates forward. So if we can lower the rate of support for Trump, keep the focus on COVID, on our economy, which he wants to praise so much, but really talk about how disastrous it's been. We talk about a lot of the issues that impact poor Black and brown and immigrant communities. We'll get the support that he needs. You keep that focus on him and the incompetence of COVID, and we should be able to carry the day on election day.
This race war that's happening in the nation, Senator, conversations on systemic oppression and systemic racism as well. How important of a role will that play in these elections? And I would also like to get your personal comments on what is happening in the nation since the death of George Floyd and your take on what needs to be done to make a true change on this.
It's a very complicated, it's so complicated to really pinpoint here or there what they are. Look, the issue with Mr. Floyd and the explosion that came as a result of that was because of years of, not all, but a credible amount of police officers and law enforcement agencies that tend to treat Black and brown people differently. I have known, because I have experienced myself. I know, I've seen it. I've stopped police officers from harassing young men in my community. So when you have that and you couple that with low unemployment, a lot of medical issues, the social ills that affect poor communities, it was an explosion.
Yeah.
The problem is that law enforcement and those that support them have grown up. We've all grown up with a mentality that police officers can do no wrong. And we have allowed, through the collective bargaining agreement, for police officers to create ways to insulate themselves from bad behavior. And that is changing as a result of Mr. Floyd's death. It has to change. No matter what you're hearing in attempts by, for example, the Police Benevolent Association, the people, those that are social activists, are not going to stop pushing for progressive policies that level the playing field and make sure the police officers that misbehave, police officers that break the law, pay the price.
Right.
And the sad part is that I know many police officers, and the majority of them are hardworking people that protect the community and want to go home. But that portion, that significant portion of those that don't do the right thing, are giving those that do a bad name and are making it more difficult to reach a point where we can come together and create policies that can ease some of this tension. Patrick Lynch, I think, does the greatest disservice to the city of New York in terms of police and civilian relationships. He's a fearmonger, and that doesn't help. The head of the sergeant's unit, is a racist, fearmonger. Their impulse to nominate Trump is not going to help police relations here. And I know that, a significant number of Black and Latino members of the police force were not happy with that endorsement. So we're going to change. We're going to stay on course. You have elected officials, especially younger elected officials, who came from the activist world, who are going to continue to push for policies that change the level playing field. So you have a good mix of a lot of things that will ensure that all of these efforts go for naught. And then we also have to guard against people that are agitating from the outside.
Right.
Groups that are from white supremacist groups that are coming into these rallies and breaking windows and breaking into cars and throwing projectiles and starting fights, to make sure that they don't become the talk or the piece on the radio, on the news, the story on the news. That doesn't become this fight, this breaking in, because you have these people, these agitators that are infiltrating inside of the movement to make them look bad. So we always profess peace. We can get this done with peace, The police have to respect protesters that are protesting peaceably. And we have to be vigilant to make sure that continues.
You know, Senator, I have to ask you on this. A lot of young individuals in this country have seen everything unfold on their phones and their cameras this year. There are a lot of questions about their own identity. There's fear, there's outrage, there's anger. What's your one advice to them?
My biggest advice to them is go register and vote if you can. If you're not old enough yet to vote, I don't care. I worked in my first political campaign when I was about 13 years old, when Mario Cuomo was running for office many, many, many years ago.
Wow.
I was 13 years old. Unfortunately, in our public schools, they don't teach civics. I have gone to schools in the city where I've started on a teacher educating their kids, and I've asked them, what is a city council person? What is an assemblyman? And the teacher, who's a social studies teacher, couldn't respond. So when you have that, then it's a problem, because kids should know what an assemblyman is, what a senator is, a state senator, a judge, or 3 branches of government, and how it all works. If we educated the masses at a young age from that point of view, I have no doubt that would increase significantly the amount of voter participation in this country.
Definitely. I just have a few questions left here. My first question to you has to be, what is your focus for the next 43 days for yourself and for your campaign as well?
Well, the next few days, every day for me is registering people to vote. That's first and foremost. There are several days people, if they want to vote. October 9 is the last day to vote, either by mail, to register to vote by mail, electronically, or at the Board of Elections. Very critical days. There will be early voting, I believe, from the 24th to the 1st. If you want to know what your early voting sites are, then you should definitely go online to check and see. And then there are the absentee ballots. Please make sure that you request them yesterday. There will be several ways to deliver them, and I want to encourage people to vote by absentee ballot because of the COVID crisis. I would be mortified to see, people on lines and congested small rooms voting. If you have a small area to vote, then they have to make the lines long because people have to be in by one. So if you can vote by absentee ballot, you do yourself a great favor, and you can do it 3 ways. First, you have to request a ballot, and you can do that again at the Board of Elections. And if anybody needs help, they can call my office at 718-991-3161. After you make the request, if you haven't gotten it within a few reasonable days, call the Board of Elections and insist on getting the information. If you have received it, you can drop it off at an early voting site at any time during the early voting site period. You can drop it off at the actual Board of Elections, or you can drop it off at your voting site on election day, which I don't encourage you to do. If you send it by mail, it has to be postmarked by 9 o'clock on election day. Don't take the risk. Do it early, do it soon, and drop it off at an early voting site where there are less people, not concentration of people in an area, it's less health risk, and you will get your vote counted immediately.
The important part is to get that vote counted for yourself. These are some
Absolutely.
very crucial elections. While I still have you here, I have to ask you, schools have reopened in New York City as of today. I would love to get some more information on what's happening and what are you telling parents that are still debating between an in-person learning, a hybrid setting, or a complete virtual online.
Well, look, my personal recommendation would be virtual online. If I can limit the exposure to other people as much as I can, I'd rather do that for my child, to protect my child. For some parents, it's more difficult. You have to work or language barriers, lack of access, or technical barriers. Then it's more difficult for them to go virtual. Then try blended as well as your second option. The last option is full day when we get there. But I am still concerned about what's going to happen. I'm concerned about what will happen if there is an outbreak. If you look at other educational institutions, both public and private, or you look at universities, which are a little bit more drastic because you get young men and women who start having parties and drinking alcohol and socializing. But how do you tell a 5-year-old child, don't get too close to your 5-year-old best friend in your class? And how do you tell a child who's never worn a mask before, you have to wear a mask in class? So, there are a lot of unknowns that I'm concerned about. All I can do is provide as much information to our parents. If any parents need any PPEs, provide as much PPEs as I can. That's all I can do. But I will do it with a bullhorn and encourage all of my colleagues to do the same thing and travel around the community and provide information through social media to keep people safe.
Senator, I'm sure the schools in your district have also opened. Could you give us a little insight into how they're being kept safe?
Well, we're waiting to hear from some of the parents. We haven't had a direct conversation with the parents. Of course, the administration, I've talked to some people from the Department of Education to tell me what some of the conditions are. But I want to see what the parents tell me. And once they do, then I can come on anytime you want me to come on and tell you what information is getting back to me.
Definitely. Well, it was a pleasure having you with us on
Thank
ITV
you.
Gold yet again. I again thank you for all of your time, especially stressing voting awareness is so important. I would love for you to give one last message to our audience.
Census 2020. We have to get money into our communities. If COVID has demonstrated anything, is the importance of federal dollars into our district. And we have to increase federal representation in Congress. In the last census, we lost 2 congressional districts. In this census, we probably may lose 2 more at the current rate. So we will have less Congress people to fight for us in Congress. And if you don't do it, then if you have, for example, a child who was just born or a couple years old, then what you're saying is, I don't want my child to have the maximal education because I'm not doing a census that will give us more federal dollars for our schools. So census and vote.
Yeah.
Vote, vote.
Yes, for sure. Census and vote. What a great combination. Senator Sepúlveda, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.